In the quiet corners of a small town, a broken-hearted billionaire embarks on a relentless search for the daughter he lost a decade ago. The search has led him through empty leads, shattered hopes, and endless pain. But fate in its mysterious ways brings him to a diner where a simple waitress unknowingly holds the key to unraveling a family's darkest secrets. A pendant once a symbol of love between father and daughter now serves as a beacon to truths buried long ago. As the pieces of a chilling mystery fall into place, a father is forced to confront the cost of his past mistakes, and a family is pulled into a dangerous web that threatens to shatter everything. Will the search for his daughter lead to salvation, or will it expose the truth he's been running from all along? This is a story of love betrayal and the unrelenting pursuit of redemption. In the small and quiet town filled with nostalgic memories, a diner sits by the main street, waiting for customers to pass by and find a little warmth in the biting cold of winter. The faded neon sign flickers weakly after the relentless rain, swaying like a star that has lost its light. This is a place where everything can be forgotten, but sometimes it becomes the starting point for unexpected stories. The old diner named Rosie's, where Richard Bennett found himself one stormy night a night he would never forget. He was not the only one in the diner at that time, but the man in the expensive suit, his hair graying, and his face weighed down with worries immediately caught everyone's attention. This tech billionaire with his accomplishments and a powerful empire in artificial intelligence was still haunted by something that money could not buy back: his daughter Emily, who had been missing for a decade. Richard Bennett, 52 years old, was one of the most powerful men in the world. He built Bennett Innovations from a small company into a global empire providing artificial intelligence solutions to healthcare, defense, and other critical sectors. However, behind all these successes lies another story, one filled with sorrow and regret. Emily, Richard's beloved daughter, disappeared when she was only 16. No clues, no traces, only the vast emptiness that haunted the father's soul. 10 years have passed, but the pain has not faded. Richard searched for his daughter everywhere, from New York to Tokyo, from big cities to small towns where he thought he might find a clue. He hired the best detectives, spent millions of dollars tracking vague leads, but all efforts were in vain. Despite having a team of experts and the most advanced technology, all he had were unanswered questions. Emily remained missing. Richard's search journey led him to Willow Creek, a small town where time seemed to stand still. He had heard about this place through brief conversations with strangers in the cities he passed through. Rumors about old families' weathered houses covered in dust, and the silence that seemed to suggest everyone was hiding something. He didn't know why, but deep inside, Richard felt that this was the last place where he might find a clue about Emily. It was a vague, inexplicable feeling, but he decided to stop by as part of his journey to find his daughter. While Richard was searching for a lost memory, another woman, younger, with long black hair and sad eyes, moved around the diner like a ghost. Sarah Miller, 26, lived in a world very different from Richard's. She didn't have empires or money. She only had a job serving at Rosie's diner, where she had worked for 3 years. Everyone in town knew her, but no one truly understood her. Sarah was not an easy person to approach. She always wore a smile, but her eyes always carried a deep sadness. She did not show her emotions to anyone, but anyone could see that she carried a pain that she could not share. The memories of her mother, who passed away when Sarah was young, haunted her every day. Diane, Sarah's mother, was a strong yet gentle woman who taught her how to face life no matter how difficult it was. After her mother's death, Sarah had to fend for herself, working tirelessly to make a living and sometimes dreaming of pursuing a career in medicine just like her mother had once hoped. On a rainy night, when Richard entered the diner after a long day of searching with no results, he sat down at a table by the window where the light from the neon sign reflected off the rainwater. Sarah served him with politeness but a cold demeanor. Richard couldn't help but notice the crescent moon-shaped pendant she wore. It gleamed in the diner's dim light, reflecting the light from the neon sign outside. Richard couldn't believe his eyes when he realized it was the same pendant he had once given Emily on her 16th birthday. A unique gift he had designed specifically for his daughter with intricate carvings and the initials EB for Emily Bennett. Richard's heartbeat quickened. He couldn't believe this coincidence. Could this be a cruel joke from fate, or was this the sign he had been searching for all these years? He sat there holding his cup of coffee, his eyes glued to the pendant sparkling around Sarah's neck. A suffocating feeling full of tension rose within him. He couldn't let this opportunity slip away. Sarah felt Richard's gaze fixed on her. She didn't understand why a stranger would stare at her so intently, but she could sense the tension in the air. When Richard spoke asking about the pendant, his voice hoarse as if trying to suppress the strange emotions inside him, Sarah instinctively gripped the pendant tighter and cautiously replied, "This is from my mother. She gave it to me before she passed away." Yet despite her words, Richard's eyes remained fixed on the pendant, his heart pounding in his chest. His emotions began to surge, a mix of doubt and hope intertwined it. He couldn't let this pass without an explanation. Was this a sign? Or was something greater waiting for him ahead? Richard could not take his eyes off the pendant Sarah was wearing. It was the gift he had given Emily on her 16th birthday, a priceless piece that he had designed specifically for his daughter. Every detail on the pendant held a memory of the love and connection between the two of them. The crescent moon embraced the sapphire stone, and the light reflecting from the neon signs in the diner made it shine even more brightly and alluringly. Richard placed his coffee cup down, on his hand trembling slightly. It had been 10 years since Emily vanished, and this was the first time he felt like he was holding an important piece of the long story he had neglected for all these years. He knew he couldn't just sit back and ignore this strange coincidence. This wasn't an ordinary coincidence, it was a sign that he couldn't ignore. Sarah felt the tension in the air. She silently withdrew her hand from the pendant and turned back to look at Richard, her eyes briefly filled with panic. She didn't understand why this man was reacting this way to the simple item her mother had given her. But his gaze was full of longing, and she felt an inevitable pressure. Unable to escape his gaze, Sarah decided to speak. "This pendant. It's from my mother. She gave it to me when I was 16. Sarah said, her voice steady but laced with worry. Richard could not accept that answer. The truth he knew about this pendant made it impossible for him to step back. His feelings were not simply about a gift from Sarah's mother. This was an undeniable part of his memory of his daughter Emily. He knew something was wrong. "No," Richard shook his head, his voice thick with emotion. "This pendant, it's my daughter's. Emily. I designed it for her on her 16th birthday. How do you have it?" He was almost breathless, his heart pounding faster than ever. Sarah was startled, her hand instinctively placed on the pendant as if to protect it. Her eyes flashed with confusion, but she couldn't hide the bewilderment. She didn't understand why Richard was saying this. Her mother had given her the pendant when she was alive, and it was a precious memory from her mother. "What are you talking about?" Sarah was speechless, unable to comprehend what was happening. She knew she was facing a very strange situation, one that would probably never be easily explained. "This pendant is my mother's. I don't know what you're talking about." Richard looked at Sarah with sharp eyes, trying to find the truth in her gaze. He didn't want to believe it, but with each passing moment he became more and more certain. He couldn't understand why his daughter's pendant was now around the neck of a stranger. Could it be a coincidence? Or was someone hiding something much bigger? "You can't have it," Richard insisted, his voice like it was touching an irremovable pain. "There has to be a reason. I need to know more about it. Please tell me the truth." Suddenly, Sarah felt a powerful wave of emotions inside her. She couldn't answer Richard immediately. His words seemed to tear open the memories she had long buried. She had tried to live peacefully, keeping away from the past and the connections she couldn't explain. She had kept her promises to Emily, promises she couldn't break. But at this moment, with Richard staring at her, the walls Sarah had built up over the years began to shake. She couldn't keep hiding. But what should she do when the truths might change everything? The tension in the diner grew. Richard could feel that something very serious was happening, but he couldn't be sure if Sarah was connected to the disappearance of his daughter. He looked at her with unwavering determination. He needed to know more, and he wouldn't stop until he had answers. Sarah lowered her gaze, unable to look Richard in the eye anymore. The memories of Emily began flooding her mind. The long nights when they were best friends, the evenings spent under the starry sky, the promises they made to always be there for each other, no matter what. But then everything changed. Sarah sighed and spoke in a low voice. My mother, Diane, she gave me this pendant when I was 16. She said it was very important and told me to always keep it safe. I don't know why you're talking about Emily, but I can feel the pain in your eyes. I'm sorry, but I can't explain any more. Richard sat in silence, his hand gripping his coffee cup so tightly his fingers turned white. Sarah's answer only deepened his confusion. He knew he was standing on the edge of a great secret, one that he might never want to uncover. But he couldn't stop. What he was sure of was that Emily had something to do with everything that was happening. We need to talk more, Richard said firmly, because I can't let this go. Emily, she might still be alive, and I will find her. Richard and Sarah sat facing each other in the diner. The atmosphere around them seemed to pause, with only the sound of raindrops gently tapping against the window and the distant music from the jukebox. Everything seemed to slow down, as if the world was waiting for an answer, a truth that would change everything. Richard felt an irresistible urge rising inside him. The memories of Emily, his daughter who had been missing for 10 years, surged back. He remembered the nights they spent together, the times they sat in the garden watching the stars. He remembered her words when she was just 12. Dad, when I grow up, I want to draw the stars in the sky and give them a story of their own. And now the pendant he had given Emily on her 16th birthday was in front of him, worn by a woman completely unfamiliar to him. How could this be explained? How could it be seen as just a coincidence? Richard clenched his lips, the mixed emotions rising within him. He looked at Sarah, his eyes filled with pain, but also determination. I know this pendant is my daughter's, Emily. It has the initials EB for her name. How do you have it? Sarah felt the tension in Richard's voice. She shuddered slightly, her hand gripping the pendant around her neck as if the chain had become an even heavier burden than ever before. She couldn't explain clearly what was happening, but she felt herself being pulled into a story she couldn't escape. She looked into Richard's eyes, which were full of suffering. It wasn't the gaze of a man who had lost something, but the gaze of a man searching for the truth. A truth that Sarah knew, if revealed, would not only change her life, but the lives of everyone involved. Sarah could no longer stay silent. She let go of the pendant, feeling as though she was bound by it. She felt everything spinning, all the secrets from the past suddenly rushing back. Sarah knew she couldn't keep hiding, couldn't continue living in fear that one day all that she had buried would be discovered. My mother gave me this pendant when I was 16. She said it was very important to her. I don't know why she gave it to me, but I've always kept it safe. She told me never to let it go. My mother, she passed away when I was very young. Sarah began, her voice suddenly thick with emotion. Richard sat still, saying nothing. He couldn't listen any longer. What he heard from Sarah only confused him more, and a huge question arose in his heart. Why would Emily leave the pendant to Sarah? Did Sarah know something about Emily's disappearance, or was it just that the pendant had ended up in her hands in an unexplained event? Sarah. I don't understand, Richard said, his voice hoarse. Who was your mother? Why did she give you this pendant? And do you know anything about my daughter's disappearance?" Sarah took a deep breath, then looked at Richard with eyes full of sorrow. She knew the time had come for her to tell everything, even if it meant facing the fear she had been avoiding for so long. "Emily and I were best friends when we were little." Sarah began, her voice trembling. "We made a promise that no matter what, we would always protect each other. We grew up together in Willow Creek under the stars and on rainy evenings, imagining our future. But one day, Emily disappeared, and I couldn't do anything to help her." Richard sat listening, saying nothing, just looking at Sarah in tense silence. Sarah's words felt like a slap in his face, making every memory of Emily more painful than ever. Emily disappeared not long after she had a fight with her father. "I don't know where she went, but I found a letter in her closet," Sarah said, her voice nearly breaking. "She told me not to look for her, not to try to contact her again. She said she needed to go and had to keep the pendant safe. I I didn't do anything. I didn't tell anyone." Richard leaned back, feeling as though the whole world was weighing down on him. What Sarah said tore into him like a knife to his heart. He couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. Was Emily still alive? Had she been pushed into a dangerous situation that he couldn't save her from? With each passing moment, the pain of loss grew heavier. One part of Richard knew he had to find out the truth, but another part of him was afraid. Did he want to know the truth about Emily? Could the truth be too painful for him to face? He had neglected his daughter for too long, letting work and ambition overshadow the father-daughter relationship. Sarah, Richard said, his voice trembling. "I can't keep living like this. I have to find Emily, and I need your help. You know something about her, don't you?" Sarah looked at Richard with tear-filled eyes. She wanted to help him, but she also wanted to protect Emily because she didn't know if Emily would want him to find her. All she could do was keep the promise she had made to Emily all those years ago. "We have to be careful," Sarah said, her voice choked. "There are things, secrets we can't reveal. But if you want, I'll help you. I can't watch you suffer like this anymore." The next day, Richard returned to the diner once more. He couldn't sleep, couldn't stop thinking about everything Sarah had revealed. Each story she shared felt like a missing piece in the hazy puzzle of Emily's life, but it only deepened his pain. He knew that seeking the truth wouldn't be easy, and he might have to face things he never wanted to know. Sarah continued working at the diner, but since the previous day, everything had changed. Her relationship with Richard was no longer simple. They had started sharing secrets, unspoken memories. But that didn't mean everything would be easier. Inside Sarah, she could feel the tension in every step Richard took, every word he spoke, and the fear of what could happen if all these secrets were exposed. Richard sat down at the table he had sat at before the dim light from the neon sign reflecting in his eyes, and his heartbeat quickened when Sarah walked over. Today she wasn't the gentle waitress he first met. Now she was his companion on a journey to uncover the truth, though she didn't truly know what she was stepping into. "Sarah," Richard began, his voice hoarse, "I need to know more. I have to clear everything up. If Emily is connected to all of this, if she really knows what happened, then I have to find her." Sarah looked at him, her eyes full of worry. She had witnessed so much over the years, but never did she think that one day she would be the one guiding Richard through this foggy journey. She couldn't help but feel a little confused, scared, but she knew there was no turning back. What she had kept hidden all these years was slowly coming to light. "Richard, I know you want to find Emily," Sarah said, her voice serious. "But I warn you, these secrets are not something you can easily accept. Emily, she did something that I can't fully understand. I'm afraid if you continue searching for her, you'll face a truth that you don't ever want to know." Richard clenched his fist, looking at Sarah with unwavering determination. "I've lived with this loss for too long. I've ignored everything for work, for my career. Now it's time for me to do what's right." Sarah lowered her head, feeling suffocated by Richard's determination. She couldn't look him in the eye anymore, because she knew if Richard found out the truth, everything would change. Relationships, emotions, everything would be turned upside down. Finally, Sarah sighed, running a hand through her hair, and spoke. Emily left everyone for a reason. She overheard a phone call she was never meant to hear, and that's why she disappeared. Richard sat up straight, his heart pounding. What did she overhear? What made Emily leave? Sarah took a deep breath and continued, her voice heavy with each word. Emily overheard a call between her uncle Victor Bennett and a business partner. I don't know the details, but it involved a covert deal to silence a witness in a major case, one that I think is connected to your family's business. Emily knew about it and tried to confront Victor. That's why she disappeared. Richard could barely believe what he was hearing. Sarah's words hit him like a bolt of lightning, leaving him unable to think. Victor, the man he always considered family, could be involved in such a serious scandal, and had Emily gotten caught up in all of this with no way out? Victor is too powerful. He built his empire on shady deals and cover-ups. I, I can't believe I didn't realize this sooner, Richard said, his voice filled with disappointment and anger. Emily couldn't have known what she was facing, Sarah continued, her eyes clouded with painful memories. She was just a 16-year-old girl. Things went too far, and when she realized the truth, she just wanted to escape. Richard stood up, his eyes sharp as a knife. I have to find Victor. I need to know the truth. I have to find Emily. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine when she saw the determination in Richard's eyes. She couldn't stop him, but she knew that they weren't just facing Victor now. They were about to confront what would happen when all these secrets were revealed. She could no longer live in fear, but she wasn't sure what she could do to help him. They both stepped out of the diner into the dark night, and the darkness wasn't the only thing they had to face. Every step they took seemed to touch a truth neither of them could imagine, and before them lay a dangerous journey, where not only the truth awaited, but broken relationships, betrayal, and secrets that were never meant to be exposed. The questions piled up, the doubts grew in Richard's heart. Every step he took pushed him closer to a truth he had never been ready to face. But with each discovery, his pain only deepened. Would he have the strength to face everything that would come when all the secrets were revealed? The answer could only come when they faced Victor, and that would be an unavoidable confrontation. As Richard and Sarah stepped out of the diner, a sense of tension and foreboding surrounded them. The rain outside kept falling, the neon lights from the diner reflecting on the wet street, creating a hazy and mysterious atmosphere. What Sarah had just revealed was like a bomb exploding inside Richard. It wasn't just the disappearance of his daughter, but the horrific secrets within his family that he had never dared to confront. Sarah looked at Richard with worried eyes. She understood they were facing a truth that perhaps neither of them was ready to accept. However, she knew there was no turning back. The silence between them seemed to stretch on forever, only broken by the sound of the rain tapping against the ground. They stood at a crossroads, and although no one said it, they both knew the only choice was to continue. Victor must pay. Richard affirmed, his voice as cold as the wind sweeping through the empty streets. He's destroyed everything. My family, Emily's life. I won't let him get away with this. Sarah felt the determination in Richard's voice. She couldn't help but feel concerned. They were getting closer to a secret neither of them could have anticipated. But the price of this truth would be high, and it might change everything. Richard and Sarah decided to begin the investigation. But this time, they weren't just looking for clues about Emily. They were about to face one of the darkest secrets in Richard's family. They knew they couldn't do this alone, and the help from Lena Carter, the private detective Richard had hired, was crucial. Lena was a woman with talent and experience. She worked tirelessly, relentlessly, searching for evidence, for clues buried deep. She was the only one who could help them uncover the Bennett family secrets and bring the truth to light. We can't let this truth be hidden any longer, Lena said, her eyes gleaming with resolve. Victor has played a dirty game and he's hidden too much, but I will find it no matter what the cost. The three of them set off on a relentless investigation. Every step they took brought them closer to Victor, and the anxiety grew with each passing day. With Lena's help, Richard traced Victor's steps to unfamiliar places, secret meetings they never could have imagined. Every clue led them further into a darker area where power and lies ruled. One night when Richard and Lena arrived at a secluded house on the outskirts, they met an elderly man who had worked for Victor for many years. This man named Thomas had witnessed many things he could never forget, and now facing the price of the truth, he was ready to speak. Victor did everything to protect his empire. Thomas said, his voice filled with fear. The deaths of those who stood up against him, the disappearances with no explanation, they're all connected to him. Richard listened, but in his heart, everything became more confusing than ever. Emily, did she know about all this? He asked, his voice barely holding up. Thomas was silent for a long time, as if not wanting to say another word. Finally he spoke. Emily knew too much. She wasn't just your daughter. She was the only one who could expose all of Victor's secrets. The next day, Richard, Sarah, and Lena continued their search. They received word from an anonymous source that an important document related to Victor was hidden in an old archive at a bank. This document could expose the full truth about Victor's criminal activity, shady deals, and his criminal relationships. When they arrived, everything was tightly secured. Lena led the way, using her skills to bypass all security systems. Suddenly, they stood before a safe, and with her expertise, Lena opened it. The three of them slowly turned the papers inside. Numbers, signatures, and names appeared before them. One of the documents was related to an investigation into Victor's money laundering activities, and one of the names they found was Emily. Richard froze, staring at the document, his hand shaking. Emily? She knew everything. She found the truth. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Emily wasn't just a victim of her disappearance. She was the one who uncovered the truth about Victor, and maybe she had to pay the price for knowing too much. As they prepared to leave the bank, Richard felt a cold chill run down his spine. They were no longer safe. Victor's henchmen had noticed their presence, and everything began to take a more dangerous turn. Sarah looked at Richard with eyes full of concern. "You can't do this alone," she said, her voice choked. "Victor won't stop. He's too powerful." Richard turned to Sarah, his eyes resolute. "I've ignored Emily for too long. I won't stop until I bring her back." They were walking into an inevitable battle. Everything now wasn't just about the truth of Richard's family. Everyone they loved, everything they had never understood, was gradually being uncovered, and they had to be ready to face it no matter the cost. As night fell, Richard's obsession could not be quelled. The story of Emily, the family's secrets, and the dangers they faced were becoming clearer and clearer. Each step he and Sarah took brought them closer to the truth, but also pulled them toward an unforeseeable danger. Sarah and Richard were sitting in a dimly lit room, the soft light from a desk lamp illuminating their faces. Both were silent, not daring to look directly at each other. They knew that once the truth was revealed, everything would change. But they also knew there was no turning back. "Sarah, I can't believe all of this is tied to Victor. The man I thought of as family, he did all of this." Richard's voice faltered as he was overwhelmed with emotion. Everything was just too painful. Emily, if she's still alive, she could be out there living in fear because of what Victor has done. Sarah lifted her head, her eyes filled with concern and resolve. Victor didn't just hurt Emily. He built his empire on cruelty, greed, and lies. We can't let him keep hurting anyone else. Richard nodded, the determination in his eyes stronger than ever. He couldn't stand by any longer, letting Victor's crimes continue to overshadow their lives. No matter how painful the truth was, he couldn't turn back now. The next morning, as the sun began to rise, Richard, Sarah, and Lena were prepared for their important meeting with Victor Bennett. The location they chose was one of Victor's private villas, a place he often retreated to relax and handle his shady business. This was the last place they could face the villain directly, and it was their only chance to bring the truth to light. When they arrived at the villa, no one greeted them, but the cold and danger permeated every corner. Sarah could feel the tension in the air, a silence that threatened. Lena, with her sharp eyes, immediately realized that Victor never allowed anyone close without a reason. He always had everything ready. When the door to the villa opened, a middle-aged man with a cold expression stepped out. Victor Bennett. Looking at him, Richard could feel the immense danger and power that Victor carried. It was no surprise that this man had built a powerful empire, but now everything he had done would be exposed. "Richard, Sarah, what are you doing here?" Victor asked, his voice calm but full of challenge. Richard could no longer be patient. He stepped forward and said, his voice firm, "We have nothing left to say, Victor. I know everything now. All the crimes you've hidden for so long. I want to know about Emily. I want to know where she is." Victor looked at him, a smirk appearing on his lips, but his gaze held no remorse. Emily. She was a rebellious girl, too curious for her own good. She didn't know how to accept her life. And I did everything to protect this family. Sarah stood right behind Richard, feeling the tension and anger rise inside her. "You made her disappear. She wasn't the one at fault," she shouted, her voice filled with pain and fury. Victor simply looked at Sarah, unbothered. She was a threat, and she knew too much. She wouldn't keep quiet, and got involved with people I couldn't control. Richard couldn't take it anymore. The truth had been laid bare. He stepped closer to Victor, no more words to spare. "You will pay for everything, all the wrongs you've done. I won't let you get away with this." As soon as Richard finished speaking, a group of people emerged from the shadows, Victor's loyal followers. They advanced with hostile intent, and Richard could feel the danger closing in. But before anyone could act, Lena quickly intervened, using the skills she had honed over years as a detective. She swiftly neutralized the situation and forced the threats to retreat. Victor saw everything, but could do nothing. The price he had to pay had come. "You think you'll win," Victor said, his voice full of anger. "You may find evidence, win a few small battles, but in the end I'll win." Lena smirked, her gaze as sharp as ever. "All you have is lies and power. But once the truth is exposed, you'll have nothing left to protect." A few weeks after the confrontation with Victor, the collected evidence led to his arrest, facing serious charges. Everything Richard and Sarah had done had brought down Victor's empire, and the secrets he had hidden were finally exposed. But more importantly, they found Emily. The young woman, now grown, lived under the protection of the government and had built a new life. She couldn't go back to the past, but now she could live again in the light, far from Victor's threat. The reunion between Richard, Sarah, and Emily at Rosie's diner was a moment to remember. Things would never be the same, but at least their family was reunited. Richard looked into Emily's eyes, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I wasn't there when you needed me the most." Emily, now strong, simply smiled. "Dad, I understand. The important thing is you found me." Sarah watched them, feeling peace return. She had done the right thing, kept her promise to Emily, and now she could move forward with her life, her heart lighter than ever.